Welcome everyone, my name is Mark, and today, as you can see on the screen, it's Intel CES 2021, which happened January 11th, 2021, and it's been a week. I had my week to process my thoughts, write a script, and today we'll be discussing Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA, mostly focusing on Intel because they were the ones that needed to win, or that they needed to show everyone that they haven't been screwing around for 6 years. On the 11th, they did officially reveal Rocket Lake S, which is their 11th generation core CPUs for desktop, and they said they plan to release it late Q1 of 2021. So hopefully by March this stuff comes out. Who knows? It's Intel we're talking about. They've been delaying 10 nanometer since 2015, and I'll get into that later. Okay, so on the topic of production value, this literally has nothing to deal with tech, but in the beginning, if you watch this video, you can watch it on CNET, but I watched it on Intel Newsroom, which I guess is their propaganda wing. Why were there 5 camera transitions on this Gregory Bryant fellow? I counted 5 camera transitions. They're on the same guy. I did not include any that had infographics, but for the first 5 minutes, there were 5 transitions. This isn't a fancy news show. And it's just my opinion. Some people like that stuff. So, hey, someone thought it was a good idea. And then the green screen. We all know this is fake, right? Come on. Like, this is fake. It's not even on center. And it tries to be too real. That means it's fake. It's like, I don't see any lights over here. Why are there lights casting these shadows in funny directions? I don't even want to know. If it is real, then shame on me, I guess, for claiming that it's not. But we got, like, fake bookshelves. Maybe the computers might be real. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure the stuff in the background's fake. It's like, why is there a kitchen there? Is this Linus Tech Tips or something? He has a kitchen where he shoots videos in. Yeah, that was weird. This stuff is all weird. You could just have a regular stage, just like last year, 2020. CES, in my opinion, was much better presentation for at least AMD for sure, maybe even for NVIDIA, and definitely for Intel. Intel had a way better showing, in my opinion. They had a real stage. Like, well, what is this, dude? We don't need you faking levitation here. Come on, guys. Somebody thought this was a good idea, but hey, what are you going to do, right? Okay, so for the technologically relevant topics, we got a showcase of Rocket Lake, a preview of their top-tier Rocket Lake, 11th gen i9 11900K. They boasted 19% IPC improvement due to moving up architecture to Sunny Cove, but they had to backport it to 14 nanometer, which never works out perfectly. They managed to do something with it, and they call it codename Cypress Cove, but they don't really talk about it much here on this particular slide. And integrated GPU is an XE GPU, which is good. I mean, much better than what they used to have. And yep, they support up to 3200 officially for DDR4. They were always stuck at 2933, but you can overclock DDR4. Patriot Viper Steel RAM, they go up to 4400 on paper. And I have seen Corsairs Dominator Platinums on paper say 5000 megahertz on DDR4, but probably next year or the year after we're going to be transitioning to DDR5, which is gonna blow past the clock speeds of DDR4, but it's gonna take some time for that to happen. With new RAM, fix it and tinker, and the engineers figure out what the best speed is, at least starting at. A little off topic, but anyways, they have up to 20 CPU PCIe lanes, 4.0, so that's good. You can finally use PCIe 4.0 SSDs, NVMe, desire, especially if you're into content creation, 4K content creation, or people that just write a lot of data and need speed. Hey, that's there for you. And then they were bragging about AI technology, whatever's in Intel's AI technology. I don't really delve too deep into AI technology and CPUs because I don't particularly see a need for it. I know in some workstation enterprise tasks, AI processing is very important. In terms of the one particular consumer and AI technology I have seen is from last year, from CES 2020. I still remember the Adobe guy. He was a really energetic fellow. and he showed off Adobe Photoshop's AI cropping feature. I believe that's what it's called. So if you want to crop like a person or something from a photo, back in the day you had to do it by hand. But with this new AI accelerated feature from Adobe, powered by Intel, last year they showed where it's a one click and it crops itself. Wow, at least that's some real world use out of this AI technology. I mean, Intel's been peddling this AI stuff for a couple years now. I never particularly found it useful for my needs, but then again, I don't really do Photoshop, so yeah, I don't do AI research, but for people that do AI research, Intel's probably the way to go. And then they had this hilarious thing. I'll pull up on Intel CES. It's kind of like a footnote, like evidence claims thing that they had, and my God, it was bad. Well, first off, they had this one executive. Let me see if I can find her. Yeah, this person. She claimed that others can't compete this 11th gen Intel Core architecture thing. And I'm just sitting here thinking, you do know that AMD, they beat you last time with their Renoir APUs and their laptops. So what do you mean others can't compete? Yes, I can imagine, 11th gen's probably going to be a bit better than, 10th gen. But let's not kid ourselves here. Even Apple had the balls, I mean, of course it's Apple, to gloat and brag about their M1 ARM-based SoC that they built. And I'm not going to lie, it's good. M1's good. Until we see it more in action and when it's widespread, we don't really know the real performance of it, but at least on benchmarks it looks good. It's quite competitive with Intel and AMD, but I'm not gonna push that too far. We don't really know too much because Apple is closed ecosystem, walled garden, as they say. Their apps are all tailored to their ARM-based technology and ARM-based hardware with specialized code from their own apps and app store. Naturally would do better than software on a generalized CPU x86 from Intel or AMD, or from other x86 manufacturers like VIA. They're still around. Anyways, they had their Chromebooks where they claimed they had a 1.48x faster than MediaTek's Helios P60T. Let me see if I can pull it up in their video. Yes, I believe this guy was gloating about it, showing how, look at this render of our thingy-majiggy. Yeah, they were comparing against MediaTek. So they're rendering a model car thing with a I think a video chat or something behind it, and they were like, it's way faster than the competition. And then I'm just looking at it. Yeah, so eventually when this thing's done rendering, MediaTek's Chromebook starts rendering the toy car. And I can't really tell the difference because I don't know if it's real time or not. So maybe let's say it's actually 30 seconds slower. Maybe at worst it's a minute slower. But I mean, you're on a Chromebook, dude. Well, what do you expect the performance to be? I've used Chromebooks. Yeah, they're horrible, as expected. I mean, they're much faster than what I used to use when I was in school. That just tells you how bad the old technology was. But then again, we didn't have SSDs back then, Chromebooks nowadays use SSD-based technology, so yeah, naturally it would be faster. Anyways, they're competing against a MediaTek Helios P60T. Bloody MediaTek. Not to make fun of MediaTek. MediaTek's really important out there. They're a Taiwanese fabulous company that design chips, SoCs, and I believe SoC platforms. From what I've heard and read, they, for the most part, they can design everything for a smartphone. All you have to do is slap on a display, a case, and all the logistical stuff, but they can do, the SoC, the motherboard, all the business on that. And the MediaTek Helio P60T is upper mainstream ARM SoC for smartphones. I guess it's used in Chromebooks now. 12 nanometer FinFET 12 FFC process from TSMC. What does this say? It was announced in January 1st, 2018. So this is a bloody 3-year-old SoC. So if you look at the benchmarks, let's see, show benchmarks. So this is a Helios. Even some really old gen Celeron SoC from what? From almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And this MediaTek thing is still behind it on this Geekbench benchmark. It's just a benchmark, but it's allegedly 22% behind. So you're not really putting yourself in the best light when you're comparing your cutting edge Jasper Lake 10 nanometer Pentium Silver N6000 CPU or SoC. Yeah, this one. Yeah, same thing. Pentium Silver N6000 SoC. It's like, come on, guys. What's going on here, eh? It's like, come on. Let's not kid ourselves here, guys. You know, they didn't have the balls to compare themselves against. I know AMD has some sort of Athlon low-end SoC or APU that's in Chromebooks as well. Why didn't they compare against them? You know, questions got to be asked, because some people just take it Intel's word for it. Oh yeah, it's 1.48x faster, but you're comparing yourself against MediaTek. MediaTek is known for their price to performance superiority. They compete against Qualcomm. They compete against Apple and Samsung's Exynos. No. If you had this is pretty low. This is a pretty low blow, man. I think MediaTek is like a business partner of theirs too. So I don't know how MediaTek feels about being thrown on the bus. But then again, probably in this industry, people do that to each other all the time. Also, so you remember earlier I was mentioning how they've been having issues with their whole 10 nanometer business. Well, I had to dig it up because, you know, I didn't remember off the top of my head how long it's been since they were planning to have 10 nanometer tech out. The 10 nanometer based process for their Neo microarchitecture that was going to be built for it. There was this really irking statement from, where's this guy at? It was the Gregory Bryant fellow who started out this whole business. This guy. Yes, this guy. The big boss who's presenting. And he said something along the lines of Intel had, and I do remember the quote that I didn't like, bold ambition to advance computing. And I was thinking for a second, wait, what? And I'm trying to think about it. In what way in the recent history have you been doing anything that claims to be bold ambition? Yeah, so to dig it up. So on the Motley Fool, this is an article from July 26, 2017, which is still really late. But 10 nanometer tech was supposed to be in production by the end of 2015. And what time was 2015? 6 years ago, but they claim it was end. So it was probably 5 years ago that they planned to have this going. But then they delayed it. They're saying, oh, it's going to be 2017 second half. And that didn't happen. And then they're like, oh, we're going to have it done by 2017. We'll have serious volumes by 2018. No, that didn't happen either. Skylake was the last 14 nanometer, allegedly. And that was 2015 August. It launched. And obviously this was the last talk in their manufacturing design. So they used to have this model from 2007 from Intel, obviously, this tick-tock thing, where, as Wikipedia describes it, so every microarchitecture change would be the talk, and then the die shrink, which is shrinking down, for example, in this case, 14 nanometer to 10 for the future. That was, mid-2010s, obviously. Process technology is the tick. So the talk was Skylake, and we were supposed to get the 10 nanometer stuff in 2016. But as you can see in this news article, that didn't happen. And in the end, we got 10 nanometer, and it first appeared in late 2019 in their Ice Lake laptop CPUs. This was really rare. I remember I went on the Best Buy back then, and I looked to see, oh, these guys have 10 nanometer out. Let's check it out. Let's see what they got. And I look they had like one or two Intel, Ice Lake powered laptops. Like, okay, well, I mean, I guess you got something out there, right? I mean, I don't know if you consider that high volume, but they got it out eventually. The main issue with 10 nanometer was that they didn't clock as well as 14 nanometer, so it wouldn't be very useful in desktop applications or enterprise. Although enterprise, they want decent balance between clock speed and power use, heat generation, reliability, and all that business. Yeah, 10 nanometer was a failure. I mean, recently, if you heard, there's 7 nanometer, which I believe was supposed to be out at the end of this year and next year. They had to delay that till 2022 to 2023. They don't know when they're going to have it out, but sometime within that time frame. With the whole recent history of this 10 nanometer failure, 7 nanometer doesn't look good, even though I remember hearing last year that 7 nanometer will be better than 10 nanometer. It's like 10 nanometer's been delayed for 5, depending on how you look at it, 5 full years. 7 nanometer's been delayed at least once. I know that 2022-2023 thing was the recent delay. I believe there was another delay before that. I'm not sure if it was planned for late 2021 or early 2022, but they definitely had a earlier goal than 2023 for 7 nanometer Intel. Yeah, as a result, I find that bold ambition statement to be a lie, because let's not kid ourselves. I mean, I'm confident that 10 nanometer will be good, but it's 5 years delayed, and that doesn't really look good. Yeah, here's another article from PC Mag. Let's see, get rid of this thing. How do I get rid of that? Okay, let's see. Yeah, they've been refining to 14 nanometer forever, since Skylake. Technically, it was before Skylake. They had Broadwell. Broadwell was good. I mean, in terms of advancing processes to 14 nanometer, but it was allegedly not good. But, I wasn't too deep into that type of stuff back then. And then here's an article about Skylake's quality assurance, and they had a lot of bugs, and Apple was pissed off by that. So they were getting ready to move on. And as a result, they did move on last year. Alright. Yes, Intel's still profitable, even though they botched 10 nanometer so many times. And a Bloomberg article on MSN. Yeah, they did say their servers will have 10 nanometer Ice Lake being rolled out this quarter. Who knows who's buying it, but someone's buying it. So this was an article from December 3rd, 2017. 2017 was the year that AMD rolled out their first generation Ryzen, which was really good for AMD, but not good enough to catch up with Intel in terms of gaming and a single thread, but very solid for multi-thread. And they gave 8 cores to the masses, which Intel never did. So there was that. Anyways, this rumor is about Intel intentionally holding back 10 nanometer. And I was also in the same thought back then in 2017. Even 2018, I thought that. Where Intel was holding back 10 nanometer. Or they had a secret weapon that they held back then, just in case if AMD caught up. And AMD did eventually catch up. There are people saying that Intel, they have a secret weapon. They have something that will just wreck AMD. Recent history has shown, no. Intel had nothing. They were sitting around on a failed 10 nanometer for allegedly 5 years, and we all know what happened there. The AMD rolled out their refined Zen, their second generation, in 2018. Then in 2019 they rolled out their 3000 series on desktop, which finally caught up to Intel, reducing whatever lead they had to nothing, unless for like some gaming scenarios. Yeah, Intel was faster, slightly, but for the most part, why would you pay an extra $100 to be slightly faster? Well, who am I to say, right? Boy, that was late 2020. They rolled out their 5000 series desktop CPUs, and the fact that they have surpassed Intel in gaming, and for the most part, on average, they've surpassed them. The only issue is some people thought that they weren't fast enough, which, who knows, maybe AMD's holding back, but they did have a 19% IPC increase, so It's pretty good for AMD. You know, Intel's doing their best to catch up. I'm sure they'll catch up. Just depends how long it's going to take. And then 2 days after their CES, Intel appoints a new CEO, Pat Gelsinger, and he's been, you know, an Intel veteran for 30 years, and then he left a while back to go do EMC before VMware. I think technically VMware and EMC are part of Dell now, if I recall correctly. But anyways, he's going to be taking over on February 15th. Bob Swan will be there until then. So, you know, we got an engineer. So hopefully Intel will turn it around. And yeah, he did. This new guy did talk. He had some big words. He pretty much told everyone, it's somewhere in Oregon, told everyone that we, Intel, have to deliver better products to the PC ecosystem than any possible thing that a lifestyle company in Cupertino makes. And yeah, he talked about how Intel has to regain superiority. And that was obviously a slight at Apple. And, you know, Apple's M1 kind of turned Intel into a questionable position because Apple used to be a fairly big customer of Intel. All of Apple's CPUs were Intel. Intel's going to be losing that customer. Now we'll move on to Ryzen, or AMD's Ryzen. So, you know, they had their event the day after. Nothing fancy. It was really boring. We have 50 minutes of boring time. They eventually did show off their, you know, their 5000 series mobile APUs. I mean, they call them CPUs, but if you go with their old terminology, it's APUs. It just means that they integrated graphics into two versions. So they have a Zen 3 version with their newest 7nm architecture, and then they have some old leftover refreshes of their Zen 2. And they are all powered with Vega graphics. And these are another refined version of Vega, 8 compute units. And here are all the models. They did release an HX version for overclocking, an HS version, which I believe is their 35 watt models. And, you know, they claim pretty big boosts in ultra thin lineup, which is good for this multi-thread performance. It was pretty dull. Their presentation was pretty boring, but at the very least they had a real stage and whatnot. Production value was better in my opinion. But, you know, we had to sit through 50 minutes of boring. They ended the show with a talk about EPYC. They showcased 2 EPYC Milan CPUs, 32 cores, versus Intel's best Xeon 28 core. Dual also, two CPUs. And they ran them in a weather simulation. AMD claims that they had a 68% performance advantage. Their new Milan next-gen CPUs for servers. And I was like, wow. So those 8 extra cores just wrecked Intel. I mean, it's not just 8 extra cores. It's superior IPC, energy efficiency, so on and so forth. And Intel, their old 28-core Xeons, I mean, their old 14nm stuff, it's been around for a couple years. It's pretty sad. We eventually move on to NVIDIA. They had their showcase, and they showed off more RTX business. The RTX 3060 for every gamer allegedly, but they also have a horrendous shortage. Both AMD and NVIDIA, you know, kind of talked about their shortages, how they expect lean inventory, pretty low to no inventory for the rest of the first half of the year, and due to cryptocurrency mining and excessive demand with COVID-19, transportation, logistical issues involved with that. Anyways, they say it's going to be starting at 329, and you have the video here. They have, you know, 32 shader teraflops, 25 RT teraflops, 101 tensor teraflops. You know, these are just fancy numbers. Nowadays in gaming, most people understand that. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a relevant stat to compare with other GPUs, but, you know, on paper it looks good. 12 gigabytes VRAM, which is good, but it's going to be going through a 192-bit bus. It's crimping. It's going to be hurting a little bit of bandwidth, but, you know, you get a future-proof a bit with 12 gigabytes. Are there any games that will use 12 gigabytes? Not yet. And, you know, starting 329, we all know MSRPs are garbage nowadays. I would honestly expect, in terms of this market, this is coming out late February, so there's still going to be supply shortages, I'd imagine. So I wouldn't be surprised if you tack on $100 onto that, to be honest, for sale price. Or if tariffs have slammed the pricing, people are still buying them. You know, people on eBay are still buying them. eBay scalpers are scalping these for what, double, sometimes triple the MSRP. So I'm not going to be bothered with that. Hopefully this year, you know, will improve. Alrighty, thank you for watching, everyone. Hopefully you learned something. This is Worldtown FC. United to triumph.